Once I got into it deeper and I started researching, I was just like, oh, wow, what, all this other stuff I found really fascinating. That here they were on one hand doing this like crazy thing at the mall that just sounds just bonkers and illegal and stupid and ridiculous. And then on the other hand, they're also like running around and they're, going into hospitals and working there constantly and not taking any money or credit, and they're all broke. The dichotomy that was really startling.
I'm obsessed with malls, and I think a lot of people are these days. They represent so many things, I think, for so many people. What do you think is so appealing about this movie that so many people want to come see it?
I think you hit on one immediate thing, which is there's this like real mall nostalgia. I think for people, some people, have fond memories of malls, and then that's one. And then you also hear the premise, and it just sounds bonkers, and you're just like, wow, that's crazy. I'm gonna have to see that. And then I think it also just taps into some kind of fantasy, maybe, of this dream of like, oh, wouldn't it be great to live in a mall? And there's some sort of strange fantasy that people have. So I think it like taps into like a lot of different parts of the psyche. And I don't think we knew that when we were making it, that it would kind of hit on those levels. But yeah, it really connects with a lot of people.
I think the interest in malls, I don't want to say it's at a peak because I don't know if it is, but it has hit a high. Like I accidentally went to a dead mall when the West Side Pavilion was dying and only had a few stores left in it. I went in there to wander around before I went to a movie at the Landmark, and I was like,
was the first time I had been to a dead mall? Like where you could get really?
Oh, yeah. And the feeling that I got from it, I was like, I don't know what's happening. The way that I feel right now is so strange. So now I purposely go to dead malls all the time.
Yeah.
Because I want to experience that feeling again. And I watch dead mall videos.
I watch dead mall videos
on
too.
YouTube.
Yes.
They're so
Dan
fascinating.
Bell is my favorite of the dead mall video guys. For those that don't know, there's a whole genre of dead mall videos on YouTube.
They've even
They're
done
incredible.
the tiny mall in my hometown that's dying.
Yeah, so the dead mall phenomenon is really fascinating, and I think it's sort of kind of maybe intersects a little with this movie, just in terms of malls, as we all know, are struggling, and there's so many malls that have closed and become dead. This, I would tell people I was working on this, and they assumed that it was that they snuck into a dead mall.
Oh, okay.
I was like, no, it's a busy mall. But I think that just the notion of like malls, the changing economy is also really interesting. One of the things that excites me about documentaries is how it kind of creates that kind of time snapshot, this kind of glacial strata in a way. Yes. And you look at this story, so it's from 2003 to 2007, but it seems so long ago. And it's like all these things that we're talking about, malls were like popular and they were centers of communities, and now it just seems like such a different era.
So how did you come to this subject matter? Did you happen to meet one of the 8 artists?
Yes, I had met Michael Townsend. So first of all, I'm from Los Angeles, so hometown.
Born and bred.
Yeah. I was actually not born here, but I grew up here. And I would go to the malls I went to: West Side Pavilion, Santa Monica Place, Beverly Center, Galleria.
The legendary Glendale Galleria.
I went out to... I went to a number of those malls.
In the 80s, were you going to those?
Yeah, like 80s. Okay. Yeah.
Those were the golden age.
Golden age.
Yeah.
Golden age of malls. So anyway, I'm not from Providence. I've been to Providence, but like barely. When I was before this movie, I was in. It's so random. I was in Athens, Greece. I was filming for another movie out there. I made a movie about the world's greatest domino toppling artist. It's called Lily Topples the World.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great movie.
Yeah, thank you. And that was, you could check it out on HBO Max. Anyway, so I was out in Greece filming for that. and she was doing a massive domino artwork piece with the creator of the Rubik's Cube. I mean, it was so random. The Erno Rubik. She was doing this huge piece, and the building that we were in was covered in tape art. And I was like, "Oh, this is weird." And I'm interested in documentaries on unique artists, and I wanted to meet the artist of the tape art. It was Michael Townsend. I met him. We became friends. Pretty soon, he told me about this crazy story of him living in the mall. I thought he was like punking me. I thought he was just taking me for a ride. And then I think he like went away, and I like furiously like looked it up on Google, and I was like, oh my God, this is really true.
Yeah.
I spent the next several months, maybe even year, trying to convince him and the rest of the other artists to let me make a documentary. I didn't know at the time, but several other filmmakers had been making overtures to them over many years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I didn't know that. And maybe that, if I had known that, maybe I wouldn't have even tried. But
why'd they say yes to you?
so they said yes to me for maybe I'm probably convincing, but no. I think they said yes to me for the reasons that I bet the audience could like immediately understand why they said yes to me, and it has to do, I think, with the fact that I was really interested in everything that they were doing. And it was, as much as The Secret Apartment is this incredible prank, it's this incredible stunt. It's like the stunt of all stunts. I also was like, okay, there's more to this. And there's more about the context of the town and gentrification and the art that they were doing and Michael, what he was doing. And so that was kind of my entry point. And I think that a lot of people that had approached them in the past were just interested in like the real sensational, oh my God, they lived in a mall for 4 years, and they had always turned that down. So it took a little while, and it also took some time to convince all the artists, all 8 of them, to agree to be in the film. Kind of an underrated part of making documentaries is earning the trust of subjects and kind of convincing them to kind of be.
I'd imagine it's not easy.
Yeah,
especially if possibly all those people are not getting along in the present.
Yeah, I mean, I think they mostly are. There was a marriage that broke up, so there was some kind of stuff baggage between.
That actually kind of surprised me about this film, because I was wondering watching if it was going to veer into some drama happening between these 8 people, because it very well could have. Was that anything that
No, it really.
Did you cut anything out like that?
No, definitely not. The only thing that was going on was there was this kind of, over the course of the whole project, was the breakdown of the marriage, and even that was kind of mild in terms of the drama of it.
Yeah.
But like literally the most dramatic scene of their breakup is in the movie, and it happens at the food court, which is astonishing footage. It's astonishing.
I mean, one of the great. So did you know that all the footage existed after you started Googling?
I mean, the whole footage thing is also just an incredible part of this movie and this story and the making of it. So they had filmed 25 hours when they were in the apartment. Why
were they filming things like this very personal argument in the food court? Did they talk about what they thought the use for it would be later?
So they filmed, and it wasn't just, they filmed in the apartment, like I said, about 25 hours. But they also filmed, as you saw, like all their other stuff that was going on, all the other artwork, 9/11 stuff, going into hospitals, Oklahoma City. So there was just this incredible amount of footage. I was the first person to sort of see all this footage in probably 15, 16 years. Mm-hmm. It was living in hard drives amongst all of them. And some of them still had like little SD cards from the cameras that were just piled up in their attic. So why they shot it? Okay, well, I guess because they never thought they were going to make for a documentary. That was never in their plan. I guess they shot it because they're artists, and they make temporary art, and they make public art, and they just really got into the habit of just always filming themselves. It's funny because when you watch it now, it kind of stands out. You're like, wow, why are they filming stuff? But I think today, it would not be that surprising if somebody just was always filming with their iPhone. But just the fact that they were sort of doing that at the time is a little maybe like ahead of its time in a way. The footage, for those who are video people or filmmakers here, the footage was 320 by 240, 8 frames a second. Okay, so the people that, obviously, some people in the audience know what that means, but the ones that don't.
Was it all shot on that little camera?
So, but this is worse than a VHS tape. And the quality, it's worse than a VHS. It was all shot on that little camera, the Pentax Optio 4S, which they bought at Radio Shack for $100. And they all had one, as you saw in the film, in like a little Altoids case. And they filmed everything. They just always had it. What was interesting, a couple interesting just kind of details emerged when I was looking through the footage when we were editing. One was they never looked into the camera. So it was a reminder that they weren't even thinking about, we're doing this for a camera. There wasn't one moment where they ever like looked into a camera. And that was pretty astonishing. And then the other thing that I noticed was that they would sometimes, even in the footage, they would show the other person footage. So I think they were often like, they'd show them like, oh, look what we did with this cinder block wall. And they would like use that to like, almost like just as buddies.
Right.
So it was sort of revealing itself that they were kind of doing this amongst themselves as, and it was like their little inside joke. And it was an inside joke that they just leaned into it and they just pulled it off. And part of that was also filming it.
So this worked without them getting caught for 4 years, which is pretty astonishing. What do you think is the aspect of this group of people that actually made it so that they got to do this?
I mean, one is I do think that which is mentioned in the film, is that whole sort of white privilege thing, and they're able to kind of walk in and out of the mall and kind of
without being questioned.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was always like, well, nobody really cares, but then on the other hand, it's like a couple of years after 9/11. And there were, these were called like soft targets at the time, where people were worried about.
My biggest question is why was it not? You would think that the security guards would see these same people a lot in there and start to question that. But it seems like they didn't.
They didn't. First of all, they were really good.
Did they think those people worked there in the mall, perhaps?
Probably. They probably just thought they were reporting to go work at the Pottery Barn.
Okay.
Or at the Orange Julius.
Because is it a pretty massive mall?
It is the biggest mall. Okay. I feel like it's so big.
Maybe that's why they got it. Yeah, because it was so massive.
It's 13.5 acres. It's the biggest construction site in the history of Rhode Island. Somebody told me that it's like 1 million. And Matt is the producer. Wasn't it like 1 million something square feet? Something like that? I think it was like 1 million square feet.
Most of these big-ass malls are between 500,000 and 1 million square feet.
It was something like, and it's also so tall. Somebody said that if you took it off and you like just used the square footage and just kind of flattened it of all the different levels, it would cover all of Providence's downtown, like just the entire city.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah,
these places were really massive when they're built.
There you go. So it's not like the biggest mall in the U.S., but it's up there. And what's also astonishing is, and this goes back to this story of like the mall and gentrification and development. This is not a town like L.A. This is a town with 200,000 people. So it also just defies logic in terms of like the size of it versus the population. Yeah, I mean, it's just one of these like gentrification just gone haywire.
Well, that's one of the really interesting things about the Dead Mall videos on YouTube is that they do go into a whole history of the mall.
Yes, yeah.
So you get to hear the whole history of the mall.
They're awesome.
And see old pictures from the 70s,
and
80s.
Videos. Yes.
And you sort of start, common themes start emerging. Many of these malls were built within miles of each other, which is why they're all doing really bad right now. Yeah. Whoever thought that you should build these massive malls within just miles of each other?
And a lot of that has to do with, a lot of construction and mortgage stuff that was going on, where they were able to sort of just build, and it didn't really matter. And that's why they were so pissed in the community, like with these guys, where they were just like, there was no acknowledgement of what was happening when they put it there. They didn't care.
Right.
Yeah.
So a large part of this goes into Michael himself and Michael's other projects. Did you always envision that you were going to kind of tell a little bit of story of Michael's career and his vision?
Jen, you know what's interesting is that when I met Michael, and it was just that story I told you, I met him as an artist. Not as the person who snuck into the mall. Right. I think so many people meet that guy and they're like, oh, he's the guy that lived in the mall. And I didn't know anything. I met him as this. I was like impressed by his art. So I think that just sort of stuck with me the entire process of having made the movie. And once I got into it deeper and I started researching and kind of getting deeper into what they were doing, yeah, without a doubt, I was just like, oh, wow, what, all this other stuff I found really fascinating, that here they were on one hand doing this like crazy thing at the mall that just sounds just bonkers and illegal and stupid and ridiculous. And then on the other hand, they're also like running around and they're, going into hospitals and working there constantly and not taking any money or credit, and they're all broke, and so it just kind of the dichotomy that was really startling for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you stunned when you saw that the bodies in the tunnel?
Oh yeah. So the bodies in the tunnels,
amazing.
It's amazing. And that's also one of these things that's in Providence is kind of legendary. And it was also something that Michael didn't talk about it. As far as I understood, he did it. He locked it up. And when he locked it up, he literally made the artwork, put a lock and key on the only way to get in. And at that point, maybe like 25 people had seen it. And then what happened in Providence, everybody started talking about it. And for years, it became like a destination.
Did he lock it up?
Because he doesn't care. He just is like, the process of doing the artwork is enough for him. He did get the video, which was, and no one until this movie had really even seen the video. So yeah, it's all like defined.
I was really glad you went into the details about him because that's so massively interesting to find someone so willing to put in so much work for seemingly no payoff, or like, so he's not even thinking, oh, down the road this will be a payoff. No, it just doesn't matter.
He to this day he's the guy that has 41 cents in his bank, like his girlfriend says. Yes. He doesn't care. He still does temporary art. He's done thousands of temporary art projects that do not exist. And I think many of them were never photographed or videoed. And then he started to do that once so many people were like, you have to start recording that.
Also,
yeah.
It was a personal expression. So he was 29 and he basically put all of his possessions in those boxes and did casts of himself. So that was everything up to 29, and then he was moving on.
Oh, so the casts were all him?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he doesn't really talk. Now he'll talk about it. But at the time, nobody really sort of knew what the behind was. But yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's pretty wild.
Does he still do the tape art?
Yeah, full-time tape art. We had to reach him today, and he was impossible to reach because he was doing tape art, I think either at a psych ward or for a special ed school.
Now, does
That's
he
all he does.
Get paid for the tape art?
He does get paid, but it's not, he's not living in, a life of luxury. But yeah, that's what he does. When they were doing the 9/11 memorial, he would do tape art murals. He would do a tape art mural, make a couple $1,000, then they'd put that money towards the 9/11 memorial. Then he would, and that's how he lived. That's how he still to this day. He's fascinating. He's really interesting.
Really is.
And his art, he's so true in terms of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it makes you kind of think of Shepard Fairey.
Sure. Who's from Providence.
And Obey Giant.
Shep Fairey who's
did he go to RISD too?
Same crowd.
Oh my God.
So a couple years.
Does he know all those people?
Yeah. So Shepard Fairey, who you guys have seen, he did the Obama Hope poster. So he's same area, same crowd, but a little older.
Right.
So everybody knows Michael Townsend. Everybody also knows all the Fort Thunder people. This is like the world that they're all from.
Yeah.
I think Shepard Fairey went to Fort Thunder, definitely participated in it. Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a little more intentionality in his.
Sure.
But I think the Obey Giant, Andre the Giant, was kind of an experiment to see, like, if I put these stickers up all over and get people to put them up all over, will it get into everybody's consciousness?
And those stickers were first seen in Providence.
Okay.
So, if you guys know Providence, I don't know if you guys do, but it's a pretty funky, arty town. There's some real, unique people kind of in there. A lot of artists, a lot of people doing cool stuff.
So the Providence Place I read today is not doing very well.
Okay, well, there's all kinds of interesting codas, though, about the Providence Place. Well, first of all, we have something big to report.
What's that?
Which is Michael Townsend was unbanned from the Providence Place Mall. So today's what day? Wednesday. So 10 days ago he was unbanned. So technically the credit that little epilogue text is wrong. He has now been unbanned. And it had to do with the fact that the movie was starting to get a lot of attention. And as you saw also, the mall, as you said, is not doing well. It has now changed ownerships multiple times. When we were making the movie, we were nervous about the mall. We were making a movie about people that were trespassed into the mall. So we were nervous about the mall, corporate. And then what was happening over the course of the making of the movie was so many, it was changing hands. It was selling. They had lost they sold it again. Then it went into receivership, forced bankruptcy. And now they had all kinds of problems. And this mall suddenly switched from being somebody that we were worried about to somebody that wanted to embrace the documentary because they started to see oh wow, people, this
very
is
smart of them.
Yeah, this is famous Providence, folklore.
Yeah.
Let's embrace it. And now we premiered the movie. This movie's coming out, and it's coming out in a lot of theaters, a lot of cities. But we premiered the Friday before last at the Providence Place Mall. Yeah. And
Did you think you were going to be able to play there?
It's not that we thought it. We tried. We were aiming to do that for a year. You saw it in South by in 2024. We didn't premiere at Providence Place for a year later. And one of the reasons why was because of this long navigating and negotiating where it'd be cool so that we could premiere at the Providence Place Mall. When we premiered there was so much interest that we started with there were 6 or 8 screenings of that weekend, and the demand created 25 screenings in their Cineplex in that first weekend.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's so crazy because you're sitting in this movie theater and 200 feet below is the secret apartment.
Yeah.
It's just so weird. It's I can't think of another movie where the scene of the crime.
If that had been my mall, I would have been oh my God.
Yeah, it's just so crazy.
While I was trying on pants at the Old Navy, there were people upstairs eating pizza.
I mean, but it's even crazier. You're watching the movie, people are now watching the movie in the theater, and there's scenes in that theater that you're watching the movie in.
Yeah.
And then they go sneak through a door and another door, and you go out of the movie theater, and there's the door. It's just so crazy.
So at the end of this, it feels so perfect in so many ways. Talk about going back in.
I don't know if I can talk about that.
Well, so in the first place, they all kept their key.
So yes, okay,
I was I almost cried at that part.
Yeah,
I was
yeah. People,
this
that's
must
really
have been
touching.
So important.
Here's
to them
another thing
that
that's
they
really
all
neat
kept
about
their
that.
key.
I think I didn't cue them about the key bit.
Wow.
I think maybe only one of them. It was Michael when he was outside. I was I knew he had the key. That was it. The other times when I asked about the key, it was all spontaneous. It was all spur of the moment. It was literally you saw one woman who, when I asked her, Emily, "Oh, do you have your key?" And she reaches over out of frame and grabs it. And that was just totally impromptu. It just happened.
Some people still had it on their
Yeah, it
ring.
was wild. So I think it really tapped into this idea of how important it was and meaningful it was. And yeah, But as far as the last scene,
There was
I'd
no
rather not
way
talk
in
about
hell
that.
I thought that there was no way in hell I
Yes.
thought that room was still going to be there, and then doubly no way in hell I thought that the key would still work. And so when that I was just sitting there like, what do you think that says about the mall, that they didn't change the lock? They didn't board it up?
I think
They didn't try to keep anybody out?
they did try. Michael he really knew the area.
Oh, okay.
Let's say that. He really knew every.
I just can't believe they didn't change the lock.
Yeah. It wasn't a space. It
Yeah.
was just, the secret space is this dark, dirty, just non-space. There's no use for it. So it's not like anyone's ever going there. If somebody were to go there, like for a movie, you would be the first person to go there in 15 years, if this were to happen.
So you think of the story of the security guards, that what they thought was that they were new wandering around. They didn't.
We've
Do you
confirmed
think
that.
they really accidentally found it, or someone tipped them off that it was there?
So some people are like, oh, the Pottery Barn guy tipped them off. He ratted them out. But no. We have confirmed the story. All the recreation stuff is based on the reality of what we have since found. I'll tell you a funny story. We were in one of these screenings in the Providence Place Mall, and in the theater was the head security guy at the time. And he was, during the Q&A, we brought him up and he told stories. And one of the things that he confirmed, first he confirmed everything, because a lot of it was hearsay, that these guards were in and that they went in the apartment and hung out in there. He confirmed everything. But the other thing that he said that was really funny was, remember there's a line in the movie where Michael Townsend says how he was going to bring flooring in.
Yeah.
And that he actually got it in there. And that he was 2 days away from putting it down. The guard said that, one of his colleagues took it home and then put it in his own house, and it's still in there.
My God.
Yeah. There's also really funny touches where, Michael Townsend in his home in Providence has all these things that, were in the secret mall apartment. So, his refrigerator, he's like, oh, yeah, this was in the secret mall apartment. This was, this bench was in there, because they would sometimes move furniture in and out.
Oh, so the mall maybe should charge entrance to the secret mall apartment.
I mean, everybody's like, shouldn't they do tours?
Then
Isn't this
they'll
a
make
way?
300
Yeah,
$300
sure.
million and save the mall.
Totally. Why not?
The other thing I thought was great about the end is the title that comes up that says in the redevelopment they've been considering it, turning it ironically into residences.
It's incredible.
Which a lot of mall redevelopments have done and are looking into.
Yeah.
It's a lot of space. It needs repurposed.
It needs to do something, because...
But it costs $1 million. If you want to tear it down, it costs millions
it's
of dollars.
I think that's a really good point, because if it's this giant thing in the middle of Providence. If it goes out of business and becomes a dead mall, that's going to destroy their city. I mean, it's just they're not going to be able to overcome that. So you have to figure out what can they do to make this place more vital. And it's either we're running out of time.
Okay.
It's make this place more vital. And it's either they got to get people to keep coming to the mall, or they have to repurpose it, or have human services there, the DMV there, or whether it's residential.
Right.
There's got to be some idea.
So my last question is, what do you hope people's takeaway from the movie is?
I think it's some sort of thing about, I definitely love the idea of just, people watching it and finding what their own takeaway in. But I think for me, it's about this, these ideas about living your life with passion and really going all out for something. And even if it seems stupid, there's something really powerful about what they did, and just kind of going all in on something is I find really compelling in documentaries, and watching that in real life. And sure, a lot of filmmakers, including myself, I think we talk about like, oh, this story is a Trojan horse for something bigger. You know, you go in watching it and you're excited. You go in about one. I like to say that with this movie that you go in one door and then you come out another door, and I think that's kind of what I was going for.
Yeah. There's also this weird sense that it might not be too far down the road where you're like actually telling a young person about a mall, because they don't.
Yeah,
and they just be like, there was a food court.
Yeah.
And
this gigantic building where you would go and all these different
eat
floors.
Your pizza and look over the rail at all the other people, all the other kids or whatever. You know, if you're describing your like 1980s experience at a mall, or like what were these places and what did you do there?
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you.